Battlefield, a franchise that for many has been tainted to high hell in recent years. With Battlefield 5 already being as rocky as it was, Battlefield 2042 really needed to be a home run. And well, I think we all know that 2042 was in fact quite the opposite. A dumpster fire on all fronts in fact, and while it has admittedly come a long way from a gameplay perspective since its launch to the point where it feels, I don't know, playable, it's still missing one key thing. A sense of authenticity, the sense of it being a battlefield, the sense of feeling like you are in a battlefield, the sense of being a cog in the machine, if you will, in a large-scale conflict. A small part of the puzzle that is the wider battle that's happening around you. Authenticity, folks. Second to gameplay, that needs to be the key thing that the next Battlefield game gets right. Sure, the gameplay of the next game needs to be tight. Gunplay, squad play, vehicles, maps, destruction, it all needs to be done to the standard that we want to see it at. But that all needs to be packaged in an authentic coating that sells the experience to you. Otherwise, it might as well be a large-scale shooter set in a paintball field, or in a kid's bedroom where you're all playing as toy plastic soldiers. But why do I bring up all of this now? Of all the things to be talking about with the upcoming Battlefield game, this probably isn't it, right? Well, this to me actually comes in response to the discourse that I've been seeing around the Battlefield community. Discourse that has been really picking up with all of the leaks that have been coming to head from the Battlefield Labs experience that's being playtested right now. And off the back of that, I think we can all agree that a sense of authenticity has always done the Battlefield universe right. Yeah? To illustrate the point, let's do a quick comparison between some promotional art and in-game screenshots, hey? Let's start off with these two images here, the left being a shot from Battlefield 1 and the right being a shot from Battlefield 2042. Now, let's do these two images, the left being an early shot from the Battlefield 5 days and the right being a shot from Battlefield 4. How about these two? Battlefield 3 on the left and Battlefield 2042 on the right. And for good measure, let's do Bad Company 2 on the left and 2042 on the right as well. Now, first off, can we just agree that the fucking aura on the older Battlefield games slapped so much harder than what we've gotten in recent titles? Like, seriously, the likes of Battlefield 3, 1, and Bad Company in particular dripped aura. I don't know, is that what the cool kids are saying these days? But man, you can really feel like you were in a battlefield in these games. Weapons were punchy, destruction and effects were chaotic, yet worked with the gameplay flow. Vehicles had weight to them, maps were grounded and gritty. Everything felt authentic, which when you jump into the likes of 2042, you're greeted by floaty weapons and vehicles and specialists that almost comes close to feeling like a Temu version of the Star Wars Clone Wars series. Nothing about 2042 even comes close to feeling like a true, authentic Battlefield experience in the slightest. And to give credit where credit is due, when EA managed to nail that Battlefield authenticity, it's like nothing else out there on the FPS market. Now, off the back of that, folks, to be honest, if the leaks that we've been seeing so far about the next Battlefield game are anything to go by whatsoever, it actually looks like DICE are starting to remember how important that authenticity is to the Battlefield formula. The game, even in the very early state that we have seen so far, looks more grounded, gritty, and grimy by comparison to the likes of Battlefield 2042 at its best. The environments are looking like actual war zones, the gunplay is looking far weightier, stuff like that. It's obviously hard for us to get a true sense of it without getting our hands on it for ourselves, but even in such an early state, the leaks suggest that maybe, just maybe, Battlefield is returning to a position of authenticity with its design. Now, to the average Battlefield enjoyer, this should be good news. Nothing to jump up and down for joy over yet, but it's still good news regardless. At least that's what I thought. But apparently, for some, that's not enough. As I said before, folks, the community discourse that I've been seeing around these leaks so far is the kick up the arse that got this video in motion for me. Because you want to know what I've been seeing from the community when it comes to these leaks? Calls for more realism. Calls for, say, the already seemingly grounded movement system to be slowed down even more, removing things like the sliding mechanic that appears to be in the game. Gunplay to be more simulating of reality, with sharper time to kills at range, range and a requirement for less bullets to seal the deal on a target. Stuff like that. And to me, it almost feels like these calls are coming from people who are looking for Battlefield to make more of a turn towards the likes of Squad, or dare I say even Armor, for a gameplay inspiration. Which I think is something that we need to talk about, because this next Battlefield game is the make or break. I know that for many, 2042 was the straw that broke the camel's back. But this next Battlefield game, without a doubt, will be the end for the franchise if it isn't a home run. I genuinely believe that. And I also strongly believe that if Battlefield were to take a sharp turn towards a more realistic approach in its design from a gameplay perspective, then it will also signal the downfall of the franchise. And the very point I want to hammer home here in this video is that authenticity and realism do not need to go hand in hand with each other. They are not mutually exclusive. They can exist one without the other in some ways. You see, folks, the definition of realism is the quality or fact of representing a person or a thing in a way that is accurate and true to life. Whereas authenticity is defined as the quality of being genuine or real. Now, while those two terms may seem incredibly similar on the surface, I do believe that there is a sense of nuance that needs to be applied when we talk about them in the context of the gaming industry. Because I think we can all agree that to be realistic in gaming, you are ultimately attempting to recreate something as close to reality as possible for the purposes of simulating that thing within a gameplay environment. You know, a lot of simulator games try to recreate real-world professions so that we can experience what other walks of life may be like for our enjoyment. They're not exactly the most invigorating games out there because they're quite slow and tedious, but that is the nature of the experience they're trying to recreate. In the first-person shooter world, this also rings true. Games like Squad, or even more so Armor, that try to recreate extremely realistic environments, can sometimes be boring as batshit if you're just looking to get in there and cause some havoc. But that's part of their charm and why their select communities will play them. Now, authenticity, on the other hand, is something that to me, in a gameplay perspective, is more about the presentation and the art of placing gamers in the gameplay world that you've created, whether it be realistic or not. You know, the question of, have you been able to plant your audience in the world that you've created by making them feel like the world and the environment you've created is authentic? Or do players feel as though they're out of place in the game? Or maybe the game world doesn't quite sell the experience you're trying to present to them. Good, authentic experiences can be found everywhere, whether they are trying to recreate fictional or realistic game worlds. For example, I would say that Space Marine 2, with its visuals, effects, and sense of impact, is one of the most authentic feeling games that we have gotten in a long time. Sure, it places you in the hot seat of a fictional war playing as a biologically impossible super soldier, but you don't care, because the experience feels authentic to the story it's trying to tell. And every time you yoink some Xeno filth out of the air and crush them with your bare hands, it feels fucking incredible. Authenticity does not need to be born from a sense of realism to get the job done in gaming. And I feel like in the Battlefield community, we may be forgetting that slightly. I know that there are a lot of hardcore enjoyers out there in the community who are just going to use that as an argument for how Battlefield as a more realistic game can work while also getting the authenticity box ticked. And I'm just going to be completely frank with you guys here. Hardcore Battlefield is not what the core Battlefield experience should be. The mode operates in a way where weapon time to kills are shrunk to a point beyond the average human reaction time, where snipers can one-shot you anywhere in the body, and shotguns can graze you at 40 meters and still one-tap you. I get it. It's realistic. And it lets you play in an environment where positioning is key, so you can feel like taking a defensive position in a building for half the match will lead you to having a bigger impact than what it would in the core game mode. If that's what you like, then that's good for you. Battlefield has traditionally held the capacity for you to hold and host experiences like that, and I'm happy that you can do so. But that as a baseline for how Battlefield should be is what will sink this franchise. I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys here. Battlefield hasn't been a realistic game in a very long time. Sure, maybe once upon a time in the series' infancy, it is probably erred more towards the side of a realistic gameplay loop. But that hasn't been the case since, dare I say, Battlefield Bad Company 1. And as a slight hot take for this video, that's for the better, because Battlefield is at its best when it isn't trying to be overly realistic. If you think back to all those weird, wacky, and wild only in Battlefield moments that we have seen over the years, they would have not have been possible at all if the game's sandbox limited you exclusively to what would be realistic in a literal sense. If you think to those infamous clips where a tank is flung up into the sky to shoot a jet out of the sky in Battlefield 4, or the classic Renderzook, where you jumped out of a jet to shoot your pursuer with an RPG only to jump back into your own jet, something that I believe we saw for the first time in Battlefield 3, or launching a recon jeep into a passing helicopter with a shit ton of mines and C4. All of those crazy, infamous moments are possible because Battlefield's sandbox is not limited by the rule of realism these days, and while it tries to be as quote-unquote authentic as possible, it gives the player base the means to get creative with the tools that are available to them. I mean, the developers have lent into this into the past with Battlefield 2042's promotional campaign. The devs clearly care about you doing wild and wacky things with Battlefield, but at the same time, want to present an authentic experience. Let's draw things back a little bit even further away from those crazy moments though, and just dial into the core gameplay loop that is Battlefield when it's done right. Once again, thinking back to Battlefield.
More sectors than our enemy. Our troops are attacking Charlie 1. We have lost our sector to the enemy.
Damnation!